In the last video, we set up our score text and assigned a value for when the left answer is correct and assigned a value for when the right answer is correct. Now we're going to adjust the score accordingly. If the player selected the correct answer, they're going to get a +1 added to their score. If they selected the wrong answer, it's going to be a -1, so a 1 taken away from their score. Here in the game manager is where we decided if the left was correct and if the right was correct. But we need to go into the player script because that's where we know if the player collided with the left or with the right answer. So go down to the void onTriggerEnter2D collider2D other. When the player collides with another game object, that game object is set to false. Now we need to have a way to tell if that game object was the game object on the left-hand side or if it was the game object on the right-hand side. Let's go back into Unity, and right away there's a very simple way we can tell if it's the left square or the right square. Go into Scene View. Let's go ahead and zoom in on our game. If you select the left square and the right square, remember they are prefabs, so they're the exact same except for what we've changed. And there's one very obvious thing. The left square is in a completely different position than the right square. The left square has a negative x value, whereas the right square has a positive x value within the rect transform. And we're going to use that to decide if the player collided with the game object that had the negative x transform value, or if the player collided with the game object that had the positive x transform value. Go back into the player script, and let's start writing our code. This is going to remain the same. Regardless of whether it's the correct answer or incorrect answer, we want the game object to be set to false. Now we're going to use an if statement to see whether it was the left object collided with or the right object. So if that other game object had a transform position in the x that was less than 0, then we are talking about the left option. So if that other game object dot transform dot position dot x, so we're only looking at the x position within the transform, if that was less than 0, we know that this is our left option. So the player collides with the left option. So what exactly do we want to happen if the player collides with the left option? Well, if that left option was correct, we want to add to the score. If you remember, if the left option is correct, that correct value was set to -1. So we're going to do another if statement within this if statement. So go ahead and open your bracket and do a close bracket. So if this is the left object that the player collided with, and also if the correct value is less than 0. Because remember, the correct value was negative if the correct answer was on the left. Then we want to add to the score. So our score plus equals, meaning score equals score plus 1. So we're adding a 1 to whatever that score value was. So our score increases. Now if you notice, correct value and score are both red. That's because correct value and score, both these variables, do not exist within the player script. They exist in the game manager script. So we're going to have to state where they're coming from. So this correct value is within the game manager script, so game manager dot correct value, and the score is also in the game manager script, so game manager dot score. They're still red, and this is because in the game manager we made them private. So the correct value is private, so it's only accessible within this game script, and the score was private. We're going to go ahead and change that and make them both public. and public. However, we still do not want to access them within the inspector, so we're going to make them public and static. Go ahead and save that, go into your player script, and they are no longer read. So if the other game object that the player collides with is the left option, and if the left option is correct, since that correct value is less than 0, remember, it's -1 when left is correct, then we're going to add to our score. Else, if it wasn't correct and we still had collided with that left, we're going to take away from our score. So game manager dot score is going to be -=1. So we're going to take away from that score. Now we're going to do the same exact thing, but for if the player collides with the right option. So the easiest way to do this is go ahead and copy the entire if statement, including the nested if statement. So if the other game object transform position in the X is not less than 0, but if it's greater than 0, remember, that means that we collided with the right square, since the position is positive in the X. So, if the player collides with the right option, and if the game manager.correct value is, we need to do greater than 0, because if that correct value is greater than 0, that means that the correct answer is on the right, since it's positive. So now we collided with the right, and the right was correct. Then we're going to add to our score. Else, if we collided with the right and else being that the game manager.correct value is not greater than 0, so that means it's either less than or equal to 0, but there's only one other option, which is that it's less than 0. And if that correct value was less than 0, that meant that the left was correct. So if we collided with the right and the left was correct, we're going to subtract from our score. Save this script, and we have one other thing to do really quickly. We have that the score is displayed at the very start, but we need that score text to be updated, not just the score value. So the score value is being updated every time we collide with an option. However, the score value text is not changing at all. So go ahead and copy score value.text equals score and score, and we're going to put that within the update function. An update's called once per frame, so it's going to be continually updating to see if the score has changed. So now at the start of the game, it's going to display that the score is 0, but as we play and the player collides with the left and the right option, we're going to adjust that score accordingly and display it. Go ahead and save the script and go back into the game. Now when we play, if we select the correct answer, which would be 2 in this case, our score becomes 1. If we select the wrong answer, which would be 9, our score is going to go back to 0 because we subtracted since we got the wrong answer. In this video, we were able to adjust our score value as the player collided with the correct answer and as the player collided with the incorrect answer. However, once we choose both options, whether correct or incorrect, we are still stuck on the same question. We want to go ahead and move forward to the next question. And we want to do that when the correct answer is finally chosen. Remember to like this video if you found it helpful and subscribe to my channel.